This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
And welcome to it. It's Wednesday, my friends. Welcome to the Steve Gruber Show. I appreciate your support. The more information we get from different markets across the state, the more I realize that we're making some inroads out there. And we couldn't do this without your support, so we appreciate it. You, the listeners, making a difference here every day. And we're going to have some new affiliates to share with you here shortly. So for some of you folks that say, well, I can't get it where I am. Well, you're going to. Give us time. When we started this little adventure, we started with just 4 stations. So we're 4 times that now, just over, and so things are growing. But again, I say thank you to you, the listener, for making that possible. If you'd like to get involved with the program, the hotline number today is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can also check out stevegruber.com. On there, you can find the Listen Live button, so if you're going to work or somewhere else and you just want to listen live. You can also find podcasts, complete podcasts from, most recently the weekend events up at Mackinac Island, the Republican Leadership Conference, complete downloads of speeches from Ted Cruz, John Kasich, Governor Rick Snyder, and a whole host of others. So you can listen to presidential candidates, you can listen to the governor of Michigan, and it's all there on stevegruber.com. Click podcasts, and you're off to the races. Now today, speaking of podcasts you're going to want, Dr. Ben Carson will be joining me here later on the program. Dr. Ben Carson will be here in the state today, and we've been able to get him onto this program. Again, he's been here before. So Carly Fiorina last week, Ben Carson this week. We have the opportunity, fortunately, because of the listeners and the strength of our listeners, to have better guests on a more regular basis. So, again, I appreciate that as well. We'll get to the Ben Carson, Michigan visit here a little bit more in detail in a minute, but first let's start here. Federal investigators reportedly have recovered work-related and personal emails from Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State that the Democratic presidential frontrunner claimed had been deleted from her personal server, which I find shocking. I can't believe she wouldn't have told the truth. I mean, whoa. You're telling me Hillary wasn't straight on this deal? It's weird. I get it. It's what I have been led to believe. The recovery of the emails, first reported by Bloomberg News late yesterday. The initial report, which cited a source familiar with the FBI investigation into Clinton's private email server, was corroborated by the New York Times, that bastion of conservative thought, which cited 2 government officials. The point that I'm making here, you've got Bloomberg, who's wildly left, and the New York Times, which is further left still, backing this up. It was not immediately clear, and usually defenders of Hillary Clinton, the protectorate. Hillary Clinton has her mainstream media protectorate. So there you go. It was not immediately clear whether all 30,000 messages Clinton said she had deleted from the server had been recovered, but one official told the Times that it had not been difficult to recover the emails that had been found so far. The FBI is investigating whether classified information that passed through Clinton's so-called homebrew server during her time as Secretary of State was mishandled. Clinton turned over approximately 30,000 copies of messages she deemed work-related to the State Department this past December. It's not getting better. Clinton said earlier this year that the email she deleted from the private server she kept in Chappaqua, New York, at her home there mostly pertained to personal matters like her daughter's wedding and secret yoga moves. Secret yoga moves. An intelligence source told Fox News earlier this month that investigators were confident they could recover the deleted records, and apparently they were right. The source said that whoever had been deputized to scrub the server must not be very good at it or not be a very good IT guy. There are different standards to scrub when you do it for government versus commercial, so very different. It is not known what exactly or when exactly Mrs. Clinton wiped her server, nor was the person directed to do it identified. However, it seems the move did come after October 2014 when the State Department requested personal emails be returned as part of her business records. And they panicked. Oh, my God. I've got to return that? You see, that's where the big problem lies. When the State Department says we need this body of records, it's the law. And Hillary Clinton and her team turned around and said, well, we don't want them to have these things, so we'll just delete all of these. We will scrub the server. That's where the real problem lies, because that's when she crossed the line. The source saying that the FBI A-team is leading the extremely serious investigation into Clinton's server, and the focus includes a provision of the law pertaining to gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information. The section of the Espionage Act in question is known as 18 U.S. Code 793. When asked about the report, Clinton's presidential campaign spokesman Nick Merrill told Fox News that Clinton's team will always cooperate with the FBI. Yeah, you kind of do that, but it's not what they want to do, I guarantee you that. And that Clinton and her staff simply don't know what the FBI has, doesn't have in regard to the ongoing investigation. Ed Henry said Tuesday that should the report of the newly recovered emails prove true, some of the emails recovered would already be in the investigators' hands. That's right. In fact, all of them would be in the investigators' hands, I believe. A separate source, who also was not authorized to speak on the record, said the FBI will further determine whether Hillary Clinton should have known, based on the quality and detail of the material, that the emails passing through her server contain classified information regardless of the markings. It was her job to know. The campaign's standard defense and that of Clinton is that she never sent nor received any email that was marked classified at the time. Well, that's not going to fly either, because as Secretary of State, you have to know what rises to that level that requires special handling. Oh, where is Joe Biden? Oh, there he is. Joe's coming. There's Joe Biden. He won't be here too long. He's on his way. It's Wednesday. Ben Carson on his way a little bit later, too. Here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
It is 18 after the hour. Welcome back to it, my friends. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Presidential candidate Ben Carson will be making a stop in Michigan today, as we've been talking about. Ben Carson, one of the leading GOP contenders in recent national polls, in second place in many places. And today, people in his home state of Michigan, Carson, of course, hailing from Detroit and then becoming the world-renowned pediatric neurosurgeon in the world, the first man ever to separate Siamese twins, conjoined twins at the head. And he'll be here. It's a chance for people to see him around 12:30 today in Spring Arbor, correct? I think that's where he's going to be.
I believe so, yeah.
All right, so he's going to be about 12:30 today. But just moments ago, we had a long conversation with Dr. Ben Carson during the break. He was able to stop in and talk to us again. And I asked him what it was going to take for him to move from second place to first place to secure the nomination and what his plan was to become the Republican nominee to be president of the United States. Here's part of what he said.
My plan is relatively simple, and it is just to be myself and to tell the truth. I'm not a politician. I don't want to be one. I'm not going to act like one to sort of sit there and calculate what do I need to do right now at this point. That's what politicians do. All I need to do is tell the truth, speak about the things that are important to the American people. And if that resonates with them, great. But I would never, do anything that's false just for the sake of getting votes or capturing the nomination, because that's a lose-lose proposition. I wouldn't be happy, and the people wouldn't be happy.
So, Dr. Ben Carson, here's the way we're going to do this. He gave us a lot of time, and we're going to take this interview, the exclusive interview here on the Steve Gruber Show with Dr. Ben Carson, and we're going to put it together for you for tomorrow's program, and you're not going to want to miss it. We talk about things like his second place position, the year of the outsider, the fact that he's got into this conversation just recently over the last 2 or 3 days about him questioning whether he would support a Muslim for president, which he said no, and the fact that his money is rising. Of course, you had a chance to listen in on the interview, and I think he is terrific. Now, he doesn't have the flash and glitter, but he said that's probably a benefit.
Yeah, he feels like he just wants to be himself and be honest, and that's how he is going to rise to the top in his mind. And so, I mean, you can see that he is in second place, and he does have a lot of good things to say. And he's fighting this PC will, this political correctness of, well, we can't, insult anyone.
Can't offend anybody,
Yeah, we can't offend anyone. And so that's his methodology in that regard. But, I think he's talking about issues that a lot of other candidates aren't, and ones that are really important.
I agree with that. So here's the things we talk about. We talk about his comments on a Muslim being president. We talk about the fact that his numbers are rising, the amount of cash he's bringing in. We talk about the ending of political correctness. We talk about his race to be the White House. And we talk about race in America.
Yeah, and where are the comedians these days? You talk about being PC, and nobody wants to go and offend anyone because, and so we don't even have comedians anymore. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, people are afraid to tell the truth about much of anything. And his, by the way, as I mentioned, the Super PAC supporting Ben Carson for presidential nomination has seen a huge surge in donations since that Sunday appearance on NBC's Meet the Press, where he was ambushed with a silly question about a hypothetical question about a Muslim being president. He said, no, I wouldn't support that. I wouldn't advocate that here in the United States. And Chuck Todd, little Chucky Todd, throwing it out there as a gotcha moment. Well, Chuck Todd, it's not a real question. It's garbage because NBC doesn't ask real questions or get to the bottom of things. It's certainly not with Democrats. And it was a silly thing. But as a result, his money is flowing.
Well, and you have to really think about it. Muslims, their religion, the Sharia law, is their law. Now, obviously, we have a lot of Muslims in this country, and they abide by American law. But I think that they, to put a Muslim in the presidency, well, you have to take that into consideration, that Sharia law to them is a very important part of their life.
It's the law of the world.
And not, and for all the Americans, all the rest of our who may be Christians or whatever else, that may not work for us.
Well, it doesn't work. It's opposed to the American system, exactly like Dr. Carson said. And he said if somebody renounced Sharia law, then he might, consider that possibility, or he alluded to that. But the fact that short of throwing out Sharia law and saying that American law, a nation of laws, if that's not your focus and your focal point, then he could never support a Muslim for president. And I think I agree with that. Mm-hmm. And you can go ahead and throw stones at me if you want, but I agree with that point of view. If you support Sharia law over the rule of law of America, then you have no place here, not at any elected level for that matter, not just being president. But if you endorse or advocate Sharia law and you're a county commissioner, I think that's wrong. If you're the local dog catcher, if you have any political position at all and are advocating for Sharia law, that's contrary to what we do in America. America is accepting of all religious beliefs, including Muslim, but within the parameters of the law of the land.
Yeah, and you can go back to the one gal, what was her name, that got arrested because she wouldn't issue marriage licenses.
The clerk in Kentucky, right?
It's kind of the same thing. I mean, this is why we have separation of church and state, right? So this is, the state is not going to get into the
political arena. They're not
right.
supposed to. Absolutely true, and I agree with that. Anyhow, it's so tomorrow here on the program we will have a complete conversation with Dr. Ben Carson exclusively here on the Steve Gruber Show, bringing you all the best guests whenever we can and making it happen. And we've got some other surprises for you here in the next couple of days as well. It's 25 after the hour of the Steve Gruber Show on a Wednesday. We'll be right back.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
Every time that I look in the mirror, all these lies
Can you imagine that Obamacare, after it rolled out so smoothly and everybody was so happy with the way everything went, that we have learned that people that were there to do different jobs weren't trained properly. They didn't keep proper records. They were just kind of like, hey, go do this, kind of thrown into it, if you will, which I find shocking because usually the government is so good at making sure that everything's taken care of and everything runs properly and smoothly. So I was a little astonished, frankly, to hear that Obamacare has such trouble. And now millions and millions of dollars in contracts to build websites and other problems. And now we hear about We're hearing terms like fraud and negligence, and I'm shocked probably as much as you are. Our next guest, Irene Garcia, investigative reporter for Judicial Watch's Corruption Chronicles, here on the program. Irene, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, and let's be honest, this has been a debacle. It's from so many angles for so long. Nobody is surprised. In fact, it was almost probably pretty predictable that you were going to find fraud. Recklessness of people that are incompetent in their position, people that don't even know what their jobs are. But is it worse than we would have anticipated?
Well, yes, it's worse than we anticipated, and we're talking at least $600 million worth of government contracts, and probably more, because this federal audit, the auditors could not find all the information they needed. The best part, or the big zinger, and this is often the case in government, is that the two officials in charge at the time, during that time, HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius and Marilyn Tavernier, who was in charge of the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, are gone. So there will not be any accountability for this, as is often the case in government, unfortunately.
So what you're telling me is it is easier to find Hillary's emails than it is to find answers on Obamacare.
Yes, I mean, this is crazy. Judicial Watch, this is part of an ongoing investigation by Judicial Watch. We have, in the past, uncovered records that all the folks that were hired by the government to create this big Obamacare website, this exchange where the public was supposed to go to get to shop around, a one-stop shopping for health insurance, were all of his buddies. Including the guy who was the White House Deputy Director of New Media. That's code for Internet. New Media is Internet. And all these folks, again, that website didn't function properly, so they had to spend more money to try to get it to function properly. And in that case, Judicial Watch not only uncovered that those folks were all connected to the president, so he hired all his buddies to create this website that didn't function, but then the folks inside government who were in charge of overseeing it, they got tens of thousands of dollars in performance bonuses. Judicial Watch also uncovered those records. They're on our website. I wrote about it. And now we have this federal audit that you would think the mainstream media would report on, finding pretty much similar information to what Judicial Watch has already found through Public Records Act, which is that it was this huge fleecing, that over $600 million in contracts, the government employees that were charged with overseeing them, they had to have certain qualifications. They weren't. They just kind of threw, maybe Joe Blow was available between jobs. Go over there and oversee that contract. And they had no idea what they were doing. So there were cost overruns, deadlines weren't met.
Can you imagine if this went on in the private sector? And my answer is pretty simply no, because this wouldn't go on in the private sector. However, I can see the major media in this country, they're always looking for anything. I use Mitt Romney as an example. Anything that he did in his companies, my God, it was under a microscope, and so on and so forth. The media doesn't care for the most part. They just say, it's Obamacare. We're in love with Obamacare and this president, so we're not going to actually put it out there and do our job as the fourth estate. Without Judicial Watch, I've got to be honest, over the last handful of years, how in the dark would the American people be, except for the work being done by you and your colleagues there at Judicial Watch?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I will say that I spent 13 years at a mainstream newspaper, and this kind of thing, these kinds of stories were often nixed, like, oh, they're not big enough, they're not juicy enough, especially if there was a Democrat in office, unfortunately. And the mainstream media, what we do have to be thankful for as a society, as a country, is that there are other ways to get your news, that you do not have to wait for that mainstream newspaper to come and deliver to your driveway the next morning. We're lucky as a nation that we have that, because the goal is to inform the public, to offer the facts, and then the public can make their own decision. And the mainstream media, we're seeing it more and more leaning towards the left, where they're almost in cover-up mode. And that's just unfortunate for the country.
Well, and I think you're right. There are other ways, or alternative ways to get news and information today, as opposed to obviously when you and I were younger. And it's great to some extent. However, the number one source for news in this country continues to be the three big nightly newscasts from the three big networks that routinely choose to ignore these sorts of stories for whatever reason, whether it's by design or it's just the way that they do it. If you think they're maliciously doing it, or just because they are programmed to ignore it. However it works. So even with the fact that we have an alternative, the truth is the majority of news is still disseminated by ABC, NBC, and CBS, which I think is a disservice by and large. The Fourth Estate is not carrying the water the way they should be.
And absolutely. I mean, I could not agree with you more. And not because I was a newspaper journalist, but also the mainstream newspapers in this country still carry quite a bit of weight and quite a bit of credibility with the general population. So you're right. I mean, the three networks and the mainstream newspapers, the traditional big ones, the New York Times, I worked at the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, they still carry a lot of weight. And whatever the mainstream newspapers in a certain town or a certain state still carries a lot of weight. And that's unfortunate, because the public is not getting all the information that it should objectively, the way that I was taught in journalism school when I got my journalism degree.
Well, I don't think the journalism schools are taught the same. Yeah, I don't think journalism is taught the same way it has been historically, Irene. I hate to tell you that. I don't know you went to college, but I can tell you that what I learned in college is probably wholly different than what we learn today. I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word.
Well, it's unfortunate that this administration has spent such monstrous amounts of taxpayer dollars, and there's so much negligence involved. This health care law that the president wanted to shove down everybody's throat as a hostile takeover of the nation's healthcare system, and it's turned out to be a disaster. And the media is now complicit in covering some of that up, and that is atrocious.
That is atrocious. Irene Garcia, everybody, investigative reporter for Judicial Watch's Corruption Chronicles. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, it's Wednesday here on the Steve Gruber Show. We have a hotline call, just enough time to get to it. Mike is on the line in Lansing today. Mike, welcome to the program.
Hi, Steve. It's just a continuation of the frustration with what's taking place in this country. I mean, Judicial Watch is doing a great job. Your program and Rush and right on down the lines all doing a great job getting the word out, but who's listening? It's just, I'm getting a little frustrated listening to this stuff. Everybody's grousing about Obama. Everybody grouses about what he's doing and failing to do. Nobody's holding Stabbinoff's feet to the fire or Peter's feet to the fire as they continue to support this guy. They're going to vote in this Iran treaty. Everybody's.
I know this will shock you.
Nothing is getting it done. The man has violated the Constitution. I wish to God you can start with your program and riot iron up and start making the case to impeach this guy. And I know I've said this before on your program, but how much more grousing can we do while this crap still continues and not demand that this guy?
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree. And there are standing invitations to Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters to be here on the program. They've both found creative, colorful ways to dodge me. for a very long time. They don't want to answer questions. They want to go to lunch on your dime.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
You know, another thought here on Mike, the hotline caller here a moment ago. The fact of the matter is you don't have the votes to impeach. You can sit there and say, we've groused long enough, we need to impeach him. You can impeach him. It's a waste of time, money, and effort. And make no mistake, the mainstream media will play it up against the Republicans or the conservatives or whomever, and it would swing in the favor of the Democrats come November 2016. It's not a good approach, tactically speaking. From a PR point of view, it's poor, Mike. I hate to tell you, but there's no win there. And so I just had to get that off my chest. My next guest, Megan Barth, one of my favorites, founder and proprietor, ReaganBaby.com. Megan, welcome to the program.
I enjoy being on. Thank you.
Well, love having you here. You're definitely one of our favorites. So I'm sitting here, and I've got the flat screen up, of course, in the studio here, and no, you're not on. But I'm watching the Pope come to the White House. I mean, shouldn't we have the people out there screaming? And isn't this an insult to Muslims? And isn't this an insult to atheists and so forth? Why in the world? Pardon me, but why in the hell do we have the Pope at the White House? There I go, right across the line. I saw it. I went right over it.
Yeah, why do we care if Obama's a Christian or not? We don't want to offend everybody. I don't understand what the big kerfuffle is.
Yeah, what is it? But the separation of church and state. How in the world can we even allow the Pope to be at the White House? It's a horrible thing.
Well, Obama wants to make sure he gets his little dig in with the abortion-loving nun, the transgender, and the gay bishop. Right in the front row.
Abortion-loving. I've never laughed about that term until it came out of your mouth. The abortion-loving nun. It sounds like a Saturday Night Live piece, right? I mean, it does. It's the church lady, the abortion-loving church lady on Saturday Night Live. Anyhow, your latest piece here. Talking about progressive Christianity and the new PC. Now, we just had a conversation with Ben Carson here on the program, and his attacks on political correctness. He goes, well, we've just got to get past this. We've got to get past this indoctrination. We have got to get back to telling people, telling it to them straight. And I think he's right.
Well, absolutely, because the truth is being flipped on its head. I have to hearken to a personal story. I was on TV last week and a news program, and I was debating a liberal host, and I wouldn't really call it a debate, but I had my chance to make my point, and they were asking about Hillary Clinton and the women's vote and her chances, and I specifically said, well, her chances don't look good, and it's not really great for a candidate to be under an ongoing criminal investigation. And the host and the liberal both ganged up on me and said I was wrong. That she was not under criminal investigation. I basically didn't know what I was talking about, and this is a news program.
I see. Let me slow it down for him. The FBI does not investigate machines. The FBI does not investigate paper. The FBI investigates people. Period. And in this particular case, there is a very serious investigation of a person who is commonly known as Hillary Rodham Clinton. That's pretty simple, boys and girls.
Yes, it's called the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Right, and they don't investigate machines. Now, they may look at machines as part of their investigation, but they're looking to prosecute a human being, that person being Hillary Clinton. And trust me, it's getting serious. Now that we know from the State Department that maybe all of these 30,000 alleged wiped emails have returned.
Yeah, pop the corn. And that's what Biden has been waiting for. And you know that Biden and Obama and those that are sitting on the Hill in the seats of power know exactly kind of what's coming down the pike. Biden is not wringing his hands over the fact that, should I do it? No, if that was the case, he wouldn't be meeting with Richard Trumka. He wouldn't be meeting with the nurses' unions. He wouldn't be meeting with mega donors.
That's
right. This has nothing to do about his grief. This has everything to do with strategy and timing.
No question. And Hillary's supporters are clearly in denial here. And I've got a couple that are in the family. I admit it. I've got a couple of Hillary supporters in the family, which is strange because I had a really fun comment with them the other day saying, well, she's be the first woman president. I said, is that really important? Yes. I said, well, then vote for Carly Fiorina. They got these, twisted up, painful looks on their face. You want a woman to be president, don't you? Don't you think it should be something that doesn't have a criminal indictment hanging over their head? Just throwing it out there.
Exactly, I know. And that's my whole point, is that what is a lie is now being told as the truth, and what is the truth is being told that it's a lie. And so this whole inversion of the truth, and I write about this on my piece, it's a paradox. Truth standing on her head to get attention, and this is purposeful. This is a tactic. This is an Alinskyite tactic, that you push the lie through in order for it to become the truth. And this is what they've done to, the progressive left has done even to Christianity. You can't be a traditional Christian now because that somehow is racist, that's bigoted.
Blah, blah. It's
the
nonsense.
doctrine has existed for millennia.
But the other thing that you point out in the article, is that, the son of the man that ran to be president of the Sudan, a fairly Muslim place, who's going to run to be president of the Sudan again, and they're going on their pilgrimage to Mecca, brings to school what looks like a bomb because it looks like, even Bill Maher had this one right, because it looks like a, fill-in-the-blank bomb, and he gets an invite to the United Nations and to the White House. I mean, really? What planet am I living on?
Right. This might be the biggest hoax ever perpetrated on not only the White House, but on Microsoft and on MIT and everybody else that decided to jump into the fray immediately, not even wait, and not even say, hey, don't bring things that look like bombs to school, kids.
Yeah, because I guarantee you, if I was the same age as some little white kid, brought something that looked like a bomb to school, do you think there would be any question about the ramifications?
Yeah, if a kid named John Smith brought what looked like a suitcase bomb to school, there would be the same type of reaction, but from the police and the school. And granted, should the kid have been put in handcuffs? No. But the whole point is,
yes, I think he should have.
You can't take something like a grenade or a bomb to school and expect to get away with it, especially when a kid chews a Pop-Tart in the shape of a gun and gets suspended.
Well, I actually think that if they thought there was something potentially destructive about the electrical device, it happens all the time. Police put people in handcuffs until they determine what the situation at hand. It's called standard procedure, and I think they did the right thing. That's just me. Megan Barth, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Vlad.
MeganBaby.com. Read her columns. It's worth it to you, trust me.
Feel good. Get up off of that thing and dance to you better. Get up off of that thing and dance to you. Sing it now.
All right, 55 after. Get off that thing and use the phone number, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. Dave's on the line in Negaunee. Dave, welcome to the program.
Good morning. I'll make it quick from the land of where gas jumped 20 cents for no apparent reason in Negaunee yesterday.
It did?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Maybe they thought you could afford it. Anyhow, go on, Dave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hope and change. Okay,
exactly.
Real quick, we're talking about Senator Peters and Senator Stabenow. Call the switchboard, 202-224-3124 or 21, and ask these people, why can't you go on the show? And tell them you want a response in writing. Not that you'll ever get it. The other thing is,
they don't come.
The latest talking point now is, why are you in favor of a Muslim in the White House? These people need to ask the specific question back. What Muslim is running?
Well, exactly.
Can you name a Muslim that you want in the White House? Please tell us.
It's Chucky Todd. It's a nonsense. It's an NBC crap question. I worked for NBC News for more than a dozen years. I get it. I worked inside that operation. I made the sausage, and if you know anything about sausage, then you don't want to know how it's made, if you understand me. And trust me, so I think I have a position to say about NBC, and I have friends that are other networks today, and I can assure you it works pretty similarly at all these levels, Dave. No question about it. And there is no Muslim in the White House.
Full form.
Absolutely, it's all part of the. It's a cooperative effort. We'll put it that way. But thanks for checking in, Dave. Always a pleasure, and sorry about the gas thing.
Have a good one. Yeah.
All right. No, not that Dave has gas. He bought gas for 20 cents more a gallon. You got it. Anyhow, so coming up tomorrow here on the program, Dr. Ben Carson will be here in its entirety, an exclusive interview. It's going to be a long one. All sorts of topics, race, political correctness, a Muslim in the White House. We'll talk about it. Don't miss the Thursday edition of the Steve Gruber Show. Have a great day, everyone.